you hit on something that I think is really interesting, because I've noticed, especially online, people who I know agree on basically everything, it's turned into a blood sport. It's like, no, you're a centrist squish, you're establishment, I'm the true progressive. And it's bullshit, but at the same time, it really is having an impact on some of our politics. And I tend to think that some of this is just aesthetic, because there are pragmatic progressives who get things done. My governor, Gretchen Whitmer, look, I know her extremely well. I can run down a bunch of criticisms of her, but if you look at her record, she is the most progressive Democrat, the most progressive governor we have ever had. Go down the line.
Action, Jesus Christ! I mean, God, Big Gretch is a great gov. God,
yeah, but no, she did not endorse Abdul al-Sayed, and so now she's persona non grata with a certain section of progressives. But her record should count for something. Doing shit should Oh yeah, but just not in the primary. And so it's like being a progressive shouldn't be about fandoms and your faves. To me, it should be about getting shit done.
Yes, and you progress, can have root word progress, right?
You can have reasonable disagreements. You can say, hey, I may not be sold on Medicare for all, but I sure want universal health care. It doesn't mean that I want everyone to die.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hate Netanyahu's Israel. I want Netanyahu. I want all future aid conditioned on his removal. I want him removed this fall. He has an election. I want him. If Israel wants to survive as a nation, they must get rid of Netanyahu. And we could help them by saying, we will condition your aid on that, but you're not getting that from Donald Trump, folks. Sorry.
No.
Harris would have never let this continue the way it is. Okay. But Donald Trump wants a French Riviera in the Midwest, in the Mid-East, and has told us that outright. Right. So but yet I spent all day being told that I'm a genocider that wants to murder babies. And I'm an Islamophobe because I point out, when I don't like it, religious extremists. Okay. I don't like any religious extremists. I don't want any of you fucking things. Just because you happen to be culturally more, cool than some white nationalist. If you're selling crazy theocracy, like state and church shit, hey, for me, dude, I don't care what religion you're doing it from, but apparently that makes me an Islamophobe as well. But the point is, yes, this is happening. And what is happening to us happened to the Republican Party right before it lost its fucking mind.
Right.
So we
can't
concern. So like for this war, since the Bernie wars, I've been like, okay, we cannot fight a two-front war. We can't fight a two-front war. We can't. And I have made it all the way until about 3 or 4 months ago. And I'm like, now we have to have this conversation for the heart of the progressive movement. And we have to make it clear to them, like, Western Europe does not run on socialism. Socialism does not work. Okay. They may call it something that sounds like socialism, but it is not socialism. It is social policy and is happening under capitalism. Okay. So like I don't know. I frankly think it's really fucking terrifying. I mean, it's one thing to be curious about fascism and communism and socialism back in 1929 or even 30. Okay. But to be curious about it when we know the history of it and it was unequivocal failures, like, come on, dude. I mean, I'm talking about state ownership of shit. I'm not talking about healthcare, guys. They want to abolish the presidency and the Senate. So who's going to be making the rules? Oh, well, we'll pick somebody. Yes, of course you will. You'll pick a king. You'll pick a dictator, right? Like, in the Bolshevik Revolution, the working people stayed poor, guys. You get that, right? Like they never got any richer. The rich ruling class just shifted. It became the Bolsheviks. They became rich. And they did it all by owning things that were owned by the state. Okay. But the poor peasants didn't get shit. Okay. They did. And they died by the millions. Okay. So please go read some more about socialism and capitalism. I mean, there is no perfect economic system. That's for sure. It's just like democracy. It's the worst form of government, except for all of the other options. Okay.
Right. Well, and I do find it very fascinating that a lot of these, DSA or, far left progressive candidates, they never seem to close the deal with actual working class voters. And this is not me being mean. This is just the data. And so there is a mismatch between rhetoric and closing the deal with the people you are saying you're representing. And there's a reason why when you read about communists, they're all about, we're the vanguard of the revolution. But then when people don't follow you, then you start to massacre them and things go very wrong.
Oh, very quickly. It's exactly what would happen. I've got zero doubt what would happen to the people under Trump's fascist autocracy or your socialism dream, okay? Not yours, but yours, right? Your socialist dream. And it will be a lot of dying, and especially slow dying. Let me tell you about slow dying, because, you know, we think about the totals of death. I mean, 20 million Russian soldiers, and many of them women, by the way, in the Allies' death loss. It dwarfs everything else from the Allies. We lost about 500,000 in America, 20 million dead Russian soldiers. But really, what really killed the Russians was starvation. They had starvation coming from both sides. And to starve to death, it is extremely painful. It's a slow process. And you lose all humanity. When you're starving to death alone, maybe not, but when you're starving to death locked into a city with other people, you become so crazed for food that you start thinking about eating your own children. Okay? That's how crazy it is. I mean, I promise you, I have studied these things for years now, and we have a real need for real reform in this country. And I want to work towards that reform. And I think we have an opportunity, like FDR did, with this amount of crisis that Trump has caused us. Because if you think these first 2 years are bad, you just wait. It's going to get a lot worse. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be enough crisis that we could maybe talk about having national health care. But we have to be honest about how we're going to pay for it. Because you can't just tax billionaires and people. I tried. I asked my computer, can I pay for Medicare for all? And it was like showing me my options. And I was like, well, the answer is no, I cannot. Like, I have to lower the cost. Then I can pay for Medicare for all. Right. So, like, you know, the point is, like, we cannot sentence you think other people, the poorest people, will be the ones that are thinking about eating their own children. It won't be the educated, white, deeply progressive people that are listening to this podcast that are doing that, because you guys are going to flee. You're going to flee the country. And the only people who get out of these countries are the people who have some assets. They're the only ones. And that's, by the way, at least 75, 80% of the rest of the country stuck in whatever mirrored mess we create. So we really need to think about other people as we move forward in life. And that's what I try to do. And I'm always causing harm, because there's nothing you can do that doesn't cause some kind of harm for something. But I try to minimize that harm for the greater good. And to me, the greater good right now is getting the West, broadly speaking, back on a small d democratic track.
Yeah.